Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final installment of our week looking at the core set heroes for our new player guides. And we are ending in a place that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with. We will be talking about Spider-Man, one of the first heroes that you're instructed to play with, probably the first hero that most people play with, because they just go, I know Spider-Man more than I know Captain Marvel, although that may have slightly changed in the last 5 years. But regardless, here we are. We've covered all the core set heroes except for Peter Parker Spider-Man, and that's what we're going to do today. Real quick before we get into all the hero pack discussion, I just want to remind everybody that if you enjoy hearing about encounter sets, go listen to Critical Encounters. If you just enjoy card by card analysis, go check out The Winning Hand. For think pieces and strategy, we have a great catalog with Get Up and Game. And then for gameplay, we've got Ray Plays Games and Solo Marvel Champion for your gameplay needs. Let's start off super simple here. We've got Peter Parker, a 3 recovery alter ego with the genius trait and the ability, the scientist ability, which is a resource, generate a mental resource. And he has 6 hand size and 10 hit points. So in terms of just an alter ego, this has purpose. I will say that I kind of forget that he can generate a resource. He is a hero that I think most people would say you want to go to alter ego on a pretty regular basis. He has some pretty good alter ego cards, but I almost think of him kind of the same way that I think of a character like Thor. I don't really value his other side for anything other than more hand size, and I probably should to take advantage of this resource generator a little bit more often. It can be difficult just when you're trying to balance flipping back and forth, just trying to figure out okay, is now the time when I want to get that extra resource? It's valuable, and as we'll see when we talk about the deck tech that we have, there is a resource generator Ingenuity that definitely helps. It gives you a reason to go to Genius. It is applicable to several heroes, but Peter Parker's one of the first ones that I think of when I think of that card. And so this is just another activation of Ingenuity. But yeah, not much more to say about Peter Parker in general. So let's get to Spider-Man. And Spider-Man is a 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense hero with the Avenger trait and the Spider Sense ability. An interrupt. When the villain initiates an attack against you, draw 1 card. So this is, I think, one of the big appeals of Spider-Man is just his ability to take attacks and draw cards. And I know this generally will push people to want to play him in protection. And I think it also it's weird because he's a 1 thwart hero that I associate with justice a lot. And I think it just has to do with the fact that his card itself can handle so many other things. He can defend, which keeps him alive really well, and you just then surround him with a lot of good justice cards. And I think just in general, justice has a lot of attributes that just play into what Spider-Man wants to do. But the Spider Sense ability, I think other than just learning the timing, that when a villain initiates an attack against you is one thing, and when you are blocking for somebody else, that's different because they weren't initiating the attack, so you will not draw the card. In a different world where it was when you defend against an attack, draw a card. Although even then, they've changed how defending works so much that in the core set, I don't think that would have been something that the designers would have thought of. I think initially, playing a defense card didn't count as defending, so that would have, in the designers' minds, meant that if you wanted to initiate that version of Spider Sense, you would have needed to actually use your 3 defense, which I think they probably were like, well, that's a pretty heavy cost for doing something that we want you to be doing all the time. But yeah, that's Spider-Man. I wish there was more to say, but just in general, I think he's a well-rounded hero. It's just a matter of what you do with him beyond that. But let's get into his kit. First off, we will start with his identity-specific ally, Black Cat, a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 health, and the Hero for Hire trait, something we haven't seen too much else. No heroes interact with it, at least. There might be, the line between Heroes for Hire and Defender is really slim sometimes, but that's whatever. After you play Black Cat, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. For each card with a printed mental resource discarded this way, add it to your hand. So something that's important, and this was something that is now more common with the pool aspect allies, and we saw again in... Oh no, that doesn't count. I was going to say Blade, but Blade is you get rid of him unless you pay. So all to say, Black Cat does not take consequential damage, which is something that is very rare. There are other places where you can avoid consequential damage, but this is just when she attacks, she doesn't have a conscience in that sense. She doesn't take consequential damage. She does when she thwarts, but when she attacks, she's just good. I think that takes it from being an ally who is kind of forgettable into something a little bit more substantial. She can just be 1 damage every turn, as long as that is your goal. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, her ability to buy back cards is good. She is a good... If you move into leadership, I would say that she is a fair sidekick because she doesn't take the consequential damage. Any damage she does take, although she's kind of frail, so you don't want to take too much damage, but she can heal back. She's the kind of hero that, yeah, would you like to be able to use her forced response when she comes into play on a regular basis? Sure, you probably want to get more than 1 activation out of that, but you also get so much reward out of just having her attack multiple times and not take any consequential damage. The Belle of the Ball, Swinging Web Kick, the card that everybody always references. And I think for good reason. While I do think that my personal philosophy is holding every card up against Swinging Web Kick is maybe a bit much. I feel like Swinging Web Kick is identity specific. I understand the idea of comparing identity specific attacks to Swinging Web Kick, although the variants, the different ways of looking at things, the facets of all these cards mean that, yes, this is, with no pomp and circumstance, like the premier event for attacking. It deals 8 damage for 3. Whereas other things will deal for a cost of 3, 6 damage with overkill or something else. Or you can do this, or you can do that. And like, obviously, we talk about these hero attacks every time we do this. Interestingly enough, they gave this the aerial trait, which I don't know where the overlap would be, but I think it's a weird called shot that they wanted to put aerial onto this, and the superpower trait. I don't know, I definitely think this is a strong card. I definitely see why it gets so much attention, but I think that it is a maybe a bar that is just, it's weird to me to compare against, because the only place to play it is in Spider-Man's deck. And even if you want to go, well, we're just comparing what an identity specific card can do, it's so contextually different that I almost feel like it's kind of a weird bar that the longer I interact with this community, the more I don't see why this is the card we always compare back to, but that's just me. And we have 2 copies of Enhanced Spider Sense, a 1-cost event superpower. Alright, 1 construction pass later, and we are here to talk about Enhanced Spider Sense, a 1-cost event superpower with the hero interrupt. When a treachery card is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel its revealed effects. So this is one of the things I think is really appealing about Spider-Man, is that I'm kind of at a loss to think of other heroes that naturally fit into this, although maybe aggression, because aggression kind of spreads such a wide net. But in terms of Spider-Man, I feel like he almost is a protection hero without needing to be in protection. So like, he has an effect that we would now associate with protection sewn into his kit. And this is something that I believe the protection Black Widow ally does, where she can also do this, and other effects kind of within the aspect will do that. And so this is a effect that I think is very thematic. It works for what Spider-Man does, but it's just weird to think that it's something that now we see very sparingly, and when we do, it's very aspect specific. But talking about this particularly, this just gives Spider-Man an extra level of protection. You can sit there and go, hey, I'm not going to worry about treacheries. I know when I first played this, I didn't play it correctly. I think there was other Spider-Man themed cards that I've also done this with. When I was first starting to play the game, just did not know card types well enough. And this is something that I put out as an upgrade. So I put it out, and then when a treachery was revealed, I discarded it and then realized, oh, that's not how that works. When we get into Spider-Ham one day, we'll definitely talk about a few cards like that I completely biffed on. But this is just cool. Keeps Spider-Man protected. Next up, we have 2 copies of Spider Tracer, a 1-cost upgrade item tech. So gets locked down by Yellow Jacket, gets found by Shopping Spree. It is attached to a minion. So you attach it to a minion and force interrupt. When attached minion is defeated, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So this makes up for Spider-Man's inability to thwart well. It definitely ties into other cards that when you get into the justice aspect, this can really kind of bounce off of really well. Like, what's the card? Overwatch. This bounces really well off of Overwatch, which you can attach to a scheme. And when you remove threat from that scheme, you can remove more threat from another scheme. So this is a way to just sort of like domino effect, like put it on a minion, take them out, remove 3 threat from a side scheme, then remove 3 threat from another scheme. And that can be really cool. That can be a really cool combo. Overall, I think that this card is kind of low on the power level. I know a lot of people will say, like, this is all well and good, but is it really doing a lot? And it might not be. It might be a way to just kind of keep the main scheme in check for the most part. I think it's a card you need to play and have some experience with. I have a feeling that as a new player, this card might be really underwhelming. As an experienced player, it might have more purpose, but you might kind of walk away from it being like, I don't know if that was really worth the investment. I need to have a minion in play. I need to defeat it. And that sometimes there's just so many boxes to check that it kind of loses its value. But I do think there is value to it. And we have 2 copies of Backflip, a 0-cost event. Love to see it. Defense skill. So it is going to benefit from that change to the defense ruling. This does count as defending. Interrupt defense when you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent all that damage. This is great. This is when you want to just throw Spider-Man in front of a huge attack in multiplayer for another person, and you just go, don't worry about it. You're not going to take any damage. I'm not going to take any damage. This is great in solo too. I think I would say this is my second favorite card in the pack. I do have a card that I personally like more, but this is a pretty great card. And with 10 hit points, he's got a decent amount of health, but I do think that he wants to put himself in danger. I think an evolution of this is going to be Ghost Spider, but I think he wants to put himself in danger, and this is the kind of card that can help him preserve his life total. Then we have 2 copies of Web Shooter, a 1-cost upgrade item tech. Checks all the boxes from before. Has 3 uses and a hero resource. Exhaust web shooters and remove 1 web counter. Regenerate a wild resource. So this is just helpful. This is really cheap, which I think is kind of a saving grace. If you were to think about how often you use a resource generator, you might, like a Quinn Carrier, or even more specifically like God of Thunder, you probably do get 3 or 4 uses out of it. Games are, unless things go awry, most games, now that I'm kind of tracking it just mentally as I'm putting together gameplay stuff, most games, I would say, really run about 6 to 8 turns. Maybe more, maybe less, depending on how quickly you're moving through it. But all to say, a resource generator, you may only use 3 or 4 times. So this costs 1. It does have a limit. It creates a wild resource. But then the thing is, you just put it back into the discard pile and draw it again and put it out again. So having 2 of these is, I think, really, really good. It's not my favorite card. We'll get to my favorite card next. People who know the pack backwards and forwards already know where I'm going with this, but or know where my allegiances lie. But I think this is a really good card. We see it again in the Miles pack. And I think that when you get deep into the minutia of the game, I think this actually is far and beyond one of the best resource generators. And cat's out of the bag. My favorite card is Webbed Up. The only thing I don't like about it is the cost. It's a little expensive, but I think probably for what it does, it's probably fair. I think any less expensive would just make it more broken. It is a 4-cost upgrade condition. Hero form only, attached to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. Forced Interrupt. One attached enemy would attack, discard Webbed Up instead, then stun that enemy. This buys you so much time. And you almost don't even need to flip down to Alter Ego if you want to stay focused. You're just like, I just want to finish, and I just don't want the villain to have any attacks against me. You just web them up, you cancel out the attack, then you stun them, which means you're going to cancel out the next attack. This is so interesting also because on like a Thanos that once he has his helmet, he can't be stunned. Like, this is just a way to stun him that gets around that. I have to imagine that with Iceman or with Valkyrie, this is helpful because it gives you that turn. Iceman does. He himself doesn't care about it, but a lot of cards that came with him does. And basically, the aggression, I care about upgrades on stuff. This is going to go away pretty quickly, but it is an upgrade that is going to get you the ability to, especially in multiplayer, allow other people to benefit from it. Then it's going to stun them. It buys you so much in a single card, and I just love it for that. The last card in her kit is Aunt May, a 1-cost support. Persona, Alter Ego action, exhaust Aunt May, heal 4 damage from Peter Parker. So this is going to be super helpful. His recovery is 3. So this is just a way to basically turn into Alter Ego form and not even have to bother exhausting to recover. You're just going to recover a whole bunch. This is an underrated card for me. I don't value Alter Ego with Peter Parker enough, but when Aunt May's out, you're silly not to use this card. And so from there on, we're going to move over to the deck tech, and we will be back later to talk about the Obligation and Nemesis kit. Alrighty, so this was originally going to be just a single deck tech when I kind of set out to make this episode. And then as I was thinking it over, I realized that I was kind of doing you all a disservice, but I thought I was doing the right thing when I first picked this deck. I picked this deck because this is coming from Web Warrior Fanatic. I trust him that he knows Spider-Man backwards and forwards. It's right there in the name. It's right there in his content. I thought it was really cool to just do a deck that revolves solely around core set cards. And I was going to sit here and tell you, like, here's how you can use the core set to, as we see right here, beat Expert Magneto. If you ever find yourself up against Magneto and all you have is the core box, now you have something that you can do with that. And then as I thought it over, I realized that this is kind of antithetical to what I intended for this to be, because I wanted this to be a next step. So what are you going to do after the core set, after you've picked up the hero in a larger sense? What are you going to do? What other packs could you pick up? So while I do recommend that you follow the link in the description to go look at this deck to just see what is capable, to understand these cards backwards and forwards a little bit better. Like I said, I didn't want to do a disservice to you. And so I did do some searching, tried to find a deck that used the minimal amount of cards. I don't think I said it in this episode, but basically that I was aiming for additionally maybe 3 or 4 packs to give you a direction to move on in. And when I couldn't find it, I decided that the next best thing was that I was just going to assemble a deck. And so that's what I've done here with Spider-Man Joins the Web of Life and Destiny. And the community is great in the fact that somebody has already, in the 3 or 4 hours this has been up, already pointed out what might be a better decision. And I actually would agree that this is probably correct. I think I just overlooked the fact that Homeland Intervention was part of this wave. I can find this deck to the Sinister Motives wave. I don't know how I overlooked Homeland Intervention because it's a shield card. Let me just look that up real quick here so that you guys can all... Homeland. So, yes, this is a valuable card for this deck. This is an oversight. I do think that in place of the 4 Justice that I have in the deck, either take out 2 copies of that, put 2 copies of this in, or this is a 41 card deck. You can probably just take out all the 4 Justices, put in 2 copies of Homeland Intervention. You'll be just fine. That is an oversight on my part, but it is something that I think, kudos to the community. Somebody already caught that blunder on my part. But let me just go through what my thoughts were as to building this deck. Because what I wanted to do was really highlight Monica Chang. She's a card that comes with Sinister Motives, and she basically enhances Surveillance Team. So in some cases, I know there was a deck we looked at earlier this week where, of course, this is a core set card, so that doesn't matter. So you might even be familiar with it. But basically, to say that this takes this card and makes it, but Monica Chang makes it better. And in some cases, you would see 1 or 2 copies of this card in a Justice deck. I put in the full 3 because I wanted to make sure that Monica had something to enhance and something to go pull from the discard pile and enhance. Beyond that, I did want to say that we want to highlight getting Web of Life and Destiny. That's one of the cards that I would say you want to look for when you're mulliganing, just because you can get it out and then it satisfies the trait lock on some of the other cards. This is a good card. If you dive deeper into the wave, this is a card that you're probably going to be very familiar with and want to take advantage of. But then the other card, to just cover our bases, was Warrior of the Great Web, which you can put onto Spider-Man. It then gives him the Web Warrior trait, and it answers the requirements you need to play Ghost Spider, who I think is a good card to be considering. She can get you back an identity-specific event, get you back that swimming web kick, get you back that backflip, and then the other one that I would deeply consider is Hobie Brown Spider-Man. If I were a Web Warrior, if I just naturally had the Web Warrior trait, I would probably invest more in Web Warrior locked cards. I didn't want to do that for the first step, for that what direction to go into, just because I felt like that was maybe making it too complex. Now, granted, if you're investing in this game, you're like, what's one more pack? Give me whatever. I should actually save this. Also, I didn't do this, but this does use Ironheart because it does do use Ingenuity, which I talked about earlier in the episode. But other than that, Helicarrier, which Helicarrier is a core set card, and one way or another, which this, I was right. I said this earlier. There was the Nebula pack. This is a card that we're also focusing on for this deck as a way to go grab side schemes. And the benefit to this is not only are you drawing 3 cards, but you are getting a side scheme. You're not getting the side scheme at a time you weren't expecting it. In this case, you are prepared to take on a side scheme. You're getting 3 cards, you're turning 1 card into 3 cards. You're getting more options, and I think that overall that is just a. Okay. Let's see what I did there. Okay. Either way, to me, one way or another, it's a good card. It's a card you're going to want in your card pool anyway. But then, as Turbo Wombat put here, Homeland Intervention is the better thing. You can use Surveillance Teams to activate on top of that. When you are low, you can use Monica Chang. Also feeds into that. That is the correct answer. 0 to thwart for 6 is better than paying 2 to thwart for 4. Still, I wouldn't blame anybody. I wouldn't blame anybody for using this card for a while, but it is a card that is a low-hanging fruit to swap out. In terms of other things that I would do, Helicarrier, as you grow, you could sub in Quinn Carrier if you just wanted something that was going to produce resources for you. But everything else, if for some reason you find yourself no longer wanting Nick Fury, I don't know what world that is, but in terms of a new player card, he's a very new player-friendly card. I would stand by this deck to at least try it out. If you're a first-time player, go get yourself the Sinister Motives box, and you can get a lot of these cards, and then just picking up Spider-Ham, which is already a powerful hero, and like I even say in my write-up, if you want to just not include Ironheart and just find something else to do with in the Ingenuity spot, go for it. But this was what I think would be a good starter Justice deck for Spider-Man. And now let's finally get around to the Obligation and the Nemesis set. And we are back to talk about the obligation. So, obligation, eviction notice, give to the Peter Parker player. You may flip to alter ego form, choose one, exhaust Peter Parker, remove eviction notice from the game, or discard one card at random from your hand. This card gains surge, discard the obligation. Another example of a time when I feel like the second dot is not as steep as some of the other obligations we've looked at, but I feel like you're jumping through enough hoops that's like, so why can't we remove the eviction notice this way as opposed to exhausting where we're just kind of like putting it off to maybe come back again? I understand what they're trying to do with this one. It's just weird because I guess I don't think either side of this is necessarily too damaging. If you have a card that's very specific to your hand, it can be a little rough that you're going to be like, well, I might have a 1 in 5 chance of discarding the card I care about. Gaining surge is a little rough, but I think overall this is kind of just a speed bump. I use that phrase a lot, but it's kind of just, it happens and it is what it is. Then we have the Vulture moving into the Nemesis set. A minion with one scheme, 3 attack, 4 health, criminal, quick strike. After this minion engages with you, it attacks you. Or after this minion engages with your hero, it attacks. So if you're in hero form, it's going to attack you. I know, I think it was in She-Hulk, I kind of verbally said, I don't even know if quick strike was in... I don't even know if quick strike was in the core set. Obviously it was. I just hadn't gotten this far to think about it. This might be one of the few instances of it in the core set. It's probably in there somewhere, but I just kind of forgot because I so rarely see this card that I didn't even remember it. But the threat of him dealing 3 damage is there, and then we've got the side scheme, which I think is also important to look at right next to it, because when Shadow of the Past gets played, you're going to have to deal with both these cards. So side scheme, when revealed, each player places a random card from their hand face down here. When defeated, return each face down card here to its owner's hand. So this is going to deprive you of a card. So if you're in hero form, you're going to come in, you're going to get attacked for 3, you're going to lose a card in your hand. That is substantial. It has an acceleration icon and 3 threat per player. In terms of the side schemes we've looked at, I think there might be some other ones that... Okay, I guess there were ones that had a fixed amount of threat, but then had hinder. This is based on each player. I think we've had that a couple other ones. Either way, this is a side scheme that I wouldn't be too concerned about unless you lose a card you specifically care about. Then at that point, I would prioritize trying to get that card back. But either way, this is actually a pretty potent 1-2 punch when you get Shadow of the Past as Spider-Man, and suddenly you've got a minion in play like this, and you lose a card, and you have to kind of chase down Vulture to get it back. That's a memorable moment. That makes for a cool story. Then we have 2 copies of Sweeping Swoop. A treachery, when revealed, stun your hero. If the villain's in play. If Vulture is in play, this gains surge. So one more reason to get rid of the Vulture. Boost icon. If this activation deals damage to a friendly character, stun that character. I guess I don't feel like stun necessarily inhibits Spider-Man too much. It would be different if stun made it so that you couldn't defend. That would be wild. But I think with Spider-Man being kind of so focused on defending and gaining card advantage through the villain phase, obviously you don't want to just all out stop yourself from being able to attack. But I think I don't know that this necessarily attacks Spider-Man as directly as some of the other Nemesis cards that we've seen. But still, it's notable. And then in multiplayer, this is going to affect everybody. At some point, this could affect Iron Man. This could affect Black Panther in a core set scenario. And, they have their varying ranges of how much stunning them is going to matter. I guess additionally, the fun part here is if you are in alter ego form, this does nothing. I guess if Vulture's in play, it surges. But if you're not, if you're just an alter ego by yourself, this is just a blank card. If Vulture's not in play, that's maybe a corner case that they didn't consider, and so they've designed cards to address all of that, so that the card does something every time it's in play. But in this case, it just doesn't. And last card for today is the Vulture's Plans. A treachery, when revealed, discard one card at random from each player's hand. Place one threat on the main scheme for each different resource type discarded this way. I don't know that I've ever seen this card come into play, but that is a pretty interesting effect because that can lose you the game out of nowhere. With enough players in play, suddenly you're adding like 3 scheme to the main scheme. That could really get out of hand. Let alone, especially in the modern age where we have resource cards that have multiple types, and because you're discarding at random, you could just discard one of Jubilee's or Bishop's resource cards, and suddenly you're contributing 2 resources to the table, and there's only 1 or 2 of you, and oh god, that actually could be very disastrous. Interesting card. And so that does it for Spider-Man. I think that this is a great core set hero. I think it's a great hero to start out at the beginning. I do think that it has some shortcomings that we didn't necessarily outline here that do make it a bit of a challenge. When you're first learning the game, I feel like Captain Marvel is more of the character you want to use as a new player because I think she's a little bit more forgiving. He has card advantage, but he has card advantage in a way that I feel, just in terms of like trying to empathize with a new player, I feel like is a little bit harder to kind of interact with. It's like, so I can get extra cards when the villain attacks me. The villain attacking me sounds like a scary thing. So yeah, just I love Spider-Man. I think he's a great hero. I think that we've seen better versions of what he has to do now. 5 years removed, we've seen other versions of it, but overall, I understand why he has the appeal. I like him. He might be like number 3 out of 5 in the core set for me, but overall, I get why people play him. And so that would cap off this week. Next week, we'll move back into the pattern we had. But like I said, I wanted to celebrate the core set. I wanted to celebrate the 5-year anniversary. So that's what we did. Until next time, thank you for watching, listening, whatever you were doing, and I hope you have a great day.